Today, we get to talk to Natty Frasca. Natty is a pleasure leadership coach for go getter women. She's a writer, a speaker, facilitator, and host of the Feminine Rebellion podcast. Hey, girl, welcome to the
Hey,
show.
thank you. So happy to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. What do you believe in and what do you stand for? And I always ask this question because I think it really is much more telling than what do you do?
Yeah, sure. What do I believe in?
Mhm.
I mean, I believe at the core of my being that every woman is a leader and has the capacity to lead in their lives, in their businesses, in their relationships. And I believe we have been led down the wrong path and a path of kind of overgiving, people pleasing, stunting, burying our own desires, this having to show up a certain way to life, being accommodating, modest, the right amount of sexy, you know, all of it has kind of led women down this path where it's like we're wearing 45 layers. We've been conditioned to like stay small in order to
Mhm.
be loved, appreciated.
Yeah.
So I believe that, we have a long way to go, but my work is helping women kind of peel back those layers and stop playing small. Um, I believe in a woman's sexuality
Mm.
as fuel for creativity and creating a life that feels really, really good from the inside out. Um, yeah, I believe in the power of connection, human to
Mm.
human connection. I think that is where, we are going to heal the planet is
Mm.
really, Brene Brown, right? Getting vulnerable and learning how to connect with humans, even when, especially when we disagree.
One of the
Yes.
things that you write is I guide women like you out of overwhelm, people pleasing, and numbness and back home to the most powerful, sacred version of yourself. So let's
Mm.
really dive into this. So I feel like when I read that, I feel like maybe there's a backstory there. Like you don't really just land in that. I mean, right, Natty? Like we don't
Yeah.
just land in those comments or statements. That those are big, bold statements, but they
Yeah.
come from a story. So you want to tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, a little bit of my origin story. It's like a moment. It was like a moment, Monica, really.
Mm,
That my entire life I feel like led me to. Um, I was, running a nonprofit
okay.
with three little kids, husband that worked a big job, wasn't home very much. Um, I was overwhelmed on a daily basis. I was on a cocktail of antidepressants and anti anxiety medication. Um, I just felt numb to life. And I remember laying in bed and thinking, like, what is this all for? Like, is this what my life's supposed to look like? And my husband and I were in couples therapy at the time, and I decided I wanted a divorce. And we had been in couples therapy for like 6 or 7 years. And I was like, we're getting nowhere. I'm done. So, in this couples therapy session, I kind of dropped this bomb. And my therapist said, well, what do you really want, Natty? And I said, I want a condo in the center of town. I want someone to mow my lawn. I want a lover, probably.
Mhm.
And he was like, actually, no, let me rephrase that. How do you want to feel? And I paused. I had no idea. I was confused by his question. I was silent for a little bit. And then I had this vision of what I wanted my life to look like and how that would feel. And the vision was me in my kitchen stirring a pot of my family's ragu. I'm from an Italian family.
Yeah.
Jerry Garcia on the radio, my little baby kids, all three of them like dancing around the kitchen, and my husband kind of coming up behind me, resting his beard on my neck, squeezing me, kissing me, pouring me a glass of red wine. And I was like, it was that I really, really craved for my life. And I didn't say that right off the bat. I just kind of choked up and started to cry. And it was the first time I really thought about what I desired versus the life that I was creating through like hustling, doing so much, having my kids in 45 different activities. And when I finally did share that in my therapy session, my husband leaned in and said, I want to do this. I want to give that to you. And I was like, what? And he's like, you don't let me. You're so tough.
Oh.
You're so tough. And yeah, it was like, ouch. And, I was raised the youngest of 3 kids in an Italian American household, the only girl. And I learned to like power through, muscle through, hustle through everything. I learned to be the best at everything. I really was very, very kind of like regimented and intense and perfectionistic. And in that moment, it just kind of became clear. I became aware that all of that training to be the best, all of that training to like have like a Martha Stewart house where my kids were eating organic food and taking violin lessons, and like it wasn't getting me anywhere. So that was the beginning of kind of my unraveling or my reclamation, really. And from there, I ended up leaving my nonprofit job, becoming a yoga and meditation teacher. And this was 7 years ago.
Wow, completely 360.
I just needed a break. I
Mm-hmm.
needed to figure out what it was I wanted. And now I'm here 7 years later. I'm coaching women out of those dark places, out of the numbness, and back home to what it is they really desire for their lives.
When you heard your husband say to you, those are I want to be that for you, but you need to let me in. Why do you feel like women, we are so buttoned up and so focused on these optics of having it all together and reaching out and saying, you know what, I need help, or I can't
Mm.
do this, or this no longer is serving me. Why do you feel women struggle so much with that?
Well, we've been trained to have it buttoned up, right? We have been led down the path of being, first of all, not connecting with other women about these things, right? Like you may have like bitch sessions, pardon my language,
Right.
but like this is where I connected with women. It was more about complaining than it was changing.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, we've been trained to be who we are not, really. Like you can't show up super sexy. You have to be the mom who does all the PTA stuff.
Hmm.
You have got to, in order to be thought of as smart, you have to work a big full-time job. There's not a lot of wiggle room in just kind of creating the lives that we want to create. Um, and there's this sense that we have to do it on our own, right? That a
Yes.
strong woman is independent. A strong woman doesn't have any needs. And so that's how I was raised. So asking my husband to support me and love me and hug me and be soft with me
Mm.
was deeply uncomfortable.
It resonates so much what you actually wrote this. Um, it looked like I had it all: a marriage, a beautiful home, food on the table, healthy kids, a great job, a nonprofit. And yet on the inside, I felt flat, empty. I would lay in bed at night, usually with a glass of Chardonnay, to numb my racing mind and wonder, is this it? But this is what I love the most. I craved more. And along that craving came the immense amount of guilt. Oh,
Yes.
my man kept telling me, be happy with what you have. You're so lucky. Be grateful. And Natty, when I read your words, I said, yes, this is exactly what I'm feeling. And when I'm connecting with women too, is that sense of overall like, well, no, this is a perfect life. I have no room to complain. And, hush it up,
Mm,
sip it up, put on your lipstick and keep going. But
mm,
and then to your point, it's like it's just optics. And we're
yes.
all sort of going through the motions, but yet not fully living. And then the
Yes.
more I talk about women like this, because I used to be that person myself, like you, women are raising their hands going, oh my God, yeah, let's talk about this because this is how I feel too. But we sort of fucked it up as women. We really thought we had to be a certain way when we're all really salivating for the other. Like, let's just have real conversations, you
Yes.
know? And
Yes.
it's now that, don't you find that you flip the narrative and now you're actually showing up as who you are with all the messiness that brought you here? More women are like nodding their heads, going,
Nodding.
yes, I
Yes,
hear you. I
please.
am you.
Me
Yeah.
too.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what I hear every single day, Monica. I
Yeah.
mean, this is the truth. Women come and say, I want more. I just don't know how to get it. And
Mhm.
really, it involves some really hard conversations sometimes with the people that we love, first with ourselves to kind of
Yeah.
recognize that it's safe to want more.
But I think you have to get to a certain point because also a lot of women are comfortably fine wearing that mask every day.
Yeah.
And even though you know they're not happy, how do we unleash that? Like give them permission to say that it is safe to speak up and it's not selfish per se to want more.
Well, I don't think you can convince people, first of
Hmm.
all. I think we show people.
Yeah.
I think that we become the fire starters, right? And so what has happened to me is people are like, wait, I want that. Like, and it just becomes this sense of awareness that, like, wait, it's like that scene from When Harry Met Sally. I want what
Yeah.
she's having, right? And by being the women who are the fire starters, the igniters,
Hmm.
we are giving permission to other women to do the same. And not everyone's going to jump on board, right? Not everyone's going to jump on my train. There are a lot of women who are still stuck who are like, how dare you?
Right.
Right? Like, how dare you jump off, this path? I'm still on it.
Hmm.
Um,
Like we
but
broke some rules or of engagement that somehow was
yes,
somewhere along the lines that we signed this contract with I'm not sure who.
yeah.
Because to your point, isn't your husband more in love with you now than ever because you are
Oh
who
my
you truly
God.
are?
Yes. Well, I'm more probably of who I was when I was like 24 when he met me, a little bit of a wild child, before we kind of buckled down, had a mortgage and three kids.
Yeah.
And I all of a sudden was like, wait a minute, the rules changed. And now I have to get really serious about my life. But there's a playfulness to life. Like,
Right.
Mary Oliver says we have this one and wild life,
Mm.
right? And it is true. And when that really sinks in, like this is it.
Yeah.
This is all we got. Like I want to wake up happy in the morning. I want to wake up and dance in my kitchen. I want to make love to my husband of 22 years and feel deeply connected to him. I don't want to be sleeping in separate bedrooms,
Hmm.
like,
Exactly.
and unfortunately that's the reality for many women is that, they get to what I have found is post 40 is where most of the women I work with, right? We've
Mm.
checked all the boxes of success, right? I had a big job. I had the white picket fence, you know, three healthy kids. And then we kind of sit and say, wait a minute, is this it?
Mm.
Like there's like an awakening.
You gotta fight for that feeling. You know, that feeling of goodness and like flow and ease. It's really
Yes.
supposed to be easy. And
Yes.
I know when I talk to people about this, they look at me like I'm crazy. But even to your point, even in the turmoil of life, the messiness of life, the day to day, the loving should be easy. The
Yes.
being just alive and knowing what you want
Yeah.
is
And yes. And if it's not easy, those are amazing moments for growth and
mhm.
reflection. Like, okay, things are chaotic right now. What's happening? Like, I had a
Yeah.
moment last week where all three of my kids were home and I was feeling like really overwhelmed with working kids. And I was like, okay, I haven't set proper boundaries,
Mhm.
right? My learning here was that I should have blocked off my work calendar for 3 days to completely engage with my family because that's what I
Mhm.
really wanted. But I didn't set the boundary. And so, what will I do going forward? Right. And part of that process was having like really vulnerable conversations with my kids and saying, wow, like I've built this business. It fills me up and I made a mistake.
Hmm.
I should have cleared off the calendar, and I'm sorry. And
Yeah.
yeah, those are moments for growth.
One of the first things you say is, I believe we must first understand the world in which we are planted, the trauma it has imprinted within our bodies before we can rise. Do you want to give me a
Mm,
little bit of where you're going
yeah.
from that?
Yes. So most women that I meet with, the first couple things they say to me are, what's wrong with me?
Mm.
What's wrong with me? Like, I have all this. Why aren't I happy? And so I think it's really important to understand that number one, there is nothing wrong with you. Like, you've simply been kind of trained to go down a path which has disconnected you
Mhm.
from your desires. So if you think about, between the ages of 0 and 7, maybe you used to play in the woods, play dress up, like there was a freedom and a wildness to you. And mostly, from 7 on, that's trained out of us. So we become, more buttoned up, more
Mhm.
quote unquote professional in order to make it in our careers, make it throughout our education. And so there's nothing wrong with you. You've just been kind of led down this other path and
Yeah.
trained to be who you are not. So that's the first part of that. That's what I really mean, is that it kind of takes the onus off of women
Mm.
in saying that, like, no, actually, you're absolutely perfect. And together we can kind of learn how to shed these layers
Mhm.
and and get back to the things you really, really want for your life. And when you get back to those, you begin to feel this aliveness. When I say come back to your body,
Yeah.
it's about how you want to feel. It goes back to that feeling,
Mhm.
right? What are the things that I'm doing that make me feel alive? And how can I do more of those things?
The next thing you say is, I believe it is from a place of intimate connection that a woman locates her voice and her wildness, her sensuality, and her purpose. So,
Mm.
are we saying like ultimately that women were just like animals, caged animals, like Glennon Doyle?
No,
Was she right
well,
on that
like
a little bit?
untamed.
Yeah.
Well, I think yes, I think we have been caged in a
Mhm.
way, imprisoned in a way. But when I talk about wildness, I'm really talking about like the way we're born
Mm.
and the things we wanted when we were born. Like, the things that, going back to the things that brought you joy when you were like 0 to 7 years old, right? And
Yeah.
returning to those things that brought you pleasure, that turned you on. Um, and yeah, your wildness is like who you were meant to be. I've recently started weaving human design into my work. I've been
Mm.
studying it for about
Love
three
it.
years. And this, I believe, is a map to a human's wildness, like showing how we are made and our overall purpose. And I don't mean connected to a job, I
Right.
mean just connected to your humanity, like what you are here to bring to the collective. It's been really powerful.
Where do you think, what does Tinder look to for you? Like the very first, you have a coaching client that comes in and is feeling a little bit lost,
Mm,
maybe is in a trance, kind of been going through
yes,
the motions, or what I call my sleeping beauties. What is the first thing you say to a sleeping beauty to get them thinking differently?
there's nothing wrong with you.
Mm.
There's nothing wrong with you. Let that sink in. And it's
Mhm.
not your fault.
Mm.
And I think that releases something in a woman
Yeah.
that makes space to build a fire,
Mm.
right?
True.
It's almost like we're clearing the space. We're creating a
Mhm.
clearing for us to build the fire. We're hacking things away. Um, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. So for you, it's sort of, it's less about adding, and you're just saying, let's just take away that shame, that
Yes.
guilt, the I'm not enough. And you're saying, no, we're going to actually, you're going to hang on to that because you're
Mm,
absolutely enough.
yes.
And you are who you are because of this, now that we understand
Yes.
this. So then how do you, so for us, the second step would be like kindling, right? That's when we start really like,
Yeah.
figuring out what lights us up. That stuff
Yeah.
that just gives you the goosies, and like, you start talking really fast because you're so passionate and people are like, oh my God,
Yes.
and we're like, we become
Yes.
so contagious with our enthusiasm that
Yes.
you can't, but you just know that's what you're passionate about. How do you get your clients to figure that out?
Yeah. Usually we go back to childhood
Yeah.
and I say, what did you love to do when you were a kid? Right. And what could you do now to tap back into that?
Mm-hmm.
So, I have a friend who was a big hiker like myself. And, over the past, she's a client, but over the past 3 years, she's climbed like 24,000-foot mountains
Wow.
in New England. So like she writes and she blogs about her hiking and yeah, so going back and kind of finding that thread. Maybe you used to do dance when you were a kid. Well, there's like a bunch of adult hip hop classes. There's
Yeah.
pole dancing in every city, right? Like there are ways to kind of get back. We're the same humans we were when we were, 5, 6, 7 years old. So our desires and the things that turn us on, they're the same.
What do you say to the women? And I'm sure you've heard this because I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, I just don't have a passion, or I don't really have a thing. I don't have a purpose, which I call bullshit
Mm,
on. But how do
yeah.
you answer that?
I would say, let's do some digging.
Hmm.
It may not feel like you have because it's kind of been beaten out of you, so to
Yeah,
speak, but like you absolutely do. And let's start small.
true.
Start by journaling, start by moving your body.
And I always say too, Natty, you probably agree with this. Sometimes there's even not having the answers, but we also know what we don't like. So sometimes
Yeah.
kind of starting with that list is much easier for people, women.
Yes.
Like, well, you definitely don't want to do X, Y, or Z. So maybe start that list. And also, I say, and if you're really, really struggling, call your 5 besties. They will tell you. Ask them
Exactly.
that one word. I did this exercise a few years ago. I just sent out a text to my 3 sisters and my 2 besties, and I said, "Give me one word that describes Monica." And
Mm,
there it is. There's that common thread.
exactly.
I'm like,
Yeah.
yep, it's
We did
theirs.
that. We did that in my last program. I had the beginning of the program, I had
Uh,
people reach out to their friends and say, like, who am I?
yeah. And they'll tell you because
Mm-hmm.
we can always see, and that's what I love doing for other women too, is like, okay, you cannot hold the mirror for yourself. I'm going to hold it for you. And let me just show
Exactly.
you,
I
because
love
you gonna
that.
can't see it. I see
Mm,
you. So
yeah.
that's a great thing. Okay, so the third step, so we Tinder, like, and then we have the kindling, and then to me it's like the TP, like really building that fire, and that's like where the support comes in, and that's where I think
Mm-hmm.
community and
Yeah.
sisterhood and
Sisterhood.
good, right? So we
Yes.
kind of create that
Yes.
through our Ignite group, or through just talking conversations like this, meeting great women like you, and just connecting that foundation. How do you translate that into your world?
Yeah. I always ask women who they spend time with.
Mm.
And, I noticed this in my own life once I kind of started on this journey. Um, I was kind of looking for women who were on this path
Yeah.
of like creating lives. And I kind of, my friend group shifted dramatically during this time from people who I love, but were just stuck and didn't want to come with me.
Natty, I
Yeah.
think we could have an entire podcast about this alone. We
Yeah.
do outgrow our people.
Yes, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And it is so so normal, and I think, we're taught that we're supposed to have friends, lifelong friends for, 50 years, but not everyone's on the same path, and
Mhm.
you have to surround yourself with people who want to do the work alongside you, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's nothing more fun than like sharing self-development books with your friends and sharing podcasts and going on retreats together and
Yeah.
right? I mean, so yeah, the TP would be building that community of sisterhood, finding the people who want the same things that you want.
Because this goes right into our next phase, which is really fuel. You need that fuel,
Hmm.
and you need those women or those people, your tribe, to
Yes.
be like, yes. And to your point, like, let's do this, try this, connect this. And that feel of just like more and more and more is
Yes.
really where you start to just ignite and
Yes.
really get excited about things. Okay, but tell everyone about your podcast too.
Oh yeah, the
Yeah.
Feminine Rebellion.
Okay.
Yeah, the Feminine Rebellion podcast is all about elevating the voices of the women who are out in the world and doing the work to, elevate our consciousness. So, yeah, I interview all sorts of different women who are kind of disruptors, who are doing different things in business and lives. Um, and they're spicy, juicy women, and it's a super fun podcast.
So, what are you
Yeah.
doing these days to learn and grow?
Oh gosh, I'm an avid reader. So I read multiple books at a time. What am I doing right now to learn and grow? I just finished for the fifth time The Art of Gathering by
Okay, tell me
Priya.
about that.
Yeah, The Art of Gathering is a book by Priya Parker,
Okay.
and definitely put the link in the show notes. It's an awesome book for anyone who is building a business or doing any kind of gathering, even having a wedding. It's about calling in the right people into the sphere, like creating a gathering where everyone feels seen. They're there for a reason.
Oh.
There is a goal, a shared goal or purpose behind it. And I'm really actually using this in my business as I like creating cohorts
Mm-hmm.
of people, like using it kind of as a framework almost, as like, who are the people who are going to work best together? What is the purpose of this container? I love that book. Just like being with my women,
Yeah,
like being with the women of the Feminine Rebellion. Like I learn from my clients,
of
right?
course.
Like it goes, we co-create and collaborate on so many things that they're my fanning.
Well, thank you so much, Natty, for joining us. Thanks for sharing with our audience
Mm.
so freely and really, you got us thinking. Like we need to be doing a few more things for ourselves. So I really appreciate you.
I appreciate being here. Thank you so much for welcoming me. This has been my utmost pleasure today. Thank you.
Okay, well, until next time, guys, remember it only takes one spark to ignite the fire within.